All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Rebecca Geier. She is a B2B technical marketer here to talk to us about how to speak to engineers. And we're excited to dive in with her today. But before we do, here's a message from our sponsor. So listen, if you want to do serious circuit board soldering, you want precise control over how much heat you use and where that heat goes. That means you need a soldering station like the Metcal GT120. Why? Because it heats your soldering tip to the right temperature quickly, it holds that temperature exactly, and it quickly recovers to that temperature after transferring heat into your workpiece. Oh, you want one? Well, you're in luck because Technitool is giving away a Metcal GT120 and it's signed by Mythbusters alum Tori Belici. Right. So if you want one, go check out Tori's GT120 unboxing video first and then enter to win. You can enter at www.techni-tool.com/Metcal-giveaway. And I'll put that all on the screen for you because there's no way you're going to remember to type that all in. And we're going to put a link in there because you want easy access to win that Metcal, don't you? So get going. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Rebecca Geier. She is a B2B technical marketer, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about talking to engineers and what we really need to be telling them. So we are excited to dive in today. Thank you, Rebecca, for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So why don't you kick us off by telling us a little bit about your journey to B2B technical marketing? Did you wake up as a little girl and decide this is what you wanted to do?
Right. No,
I want
really?
to talk to engineers all day long.
All day. That's all I want to do. I know. It's a blessing and a curse. No, and funny thing, I usually like to tell engineers, usually the last thing an engineer needs is another engineer. So I like to not be the non-engineer in the room, helping engineers really figure out how to market their innovations. But no, I came out of college and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I landed at a small company that was making, this is really way back in the day, in the Macintosh days, when we had new bus expansion slots, for those of you who, that'll date me right there. But anyway, and we were making accelerator cards that would bypass the CPU on the motherboard of Macs. And so I got found in that moment of working at that company. I loved the technical side of all these products that we use every day, from the planes we fly in, the cars we drive, the phones we use, which are incredible computers in our hand. And so that was my very first foray into just working with engineers and doing really technical, understanding the behind the scenes of very technical, a technical sale and that technical buyer journey. And then I landed at National Instruments doing marketing for Europe, and had an amazing career there, was able to move and grow sideways and up and down, and kind of where I got my master's in marketing and master's in marketing to engineers there. Super awesome company, great career, was able to fail and learn and grow and try new things. And then started a marketing agency with a colleague of mine from NI called True Marketing. Still blowing and going today, doing fantastic. I highly recommend anyone who needs marketing services for engineers to check them out at truemarketing.com. And then I exited there and have been doing fractional and freelance consulting ever since for engineers.
Okay, so you really loved expansion cards, because going from like the computer industry to NI, which basically all their equipment's like a whole bunch of slotted cards for whatever you need. Like that's all expansion cards.
It is, and it's amazing because we had a lot of NI engineers who were our customers who were taking NI. This is going to be way nerdy for you guys, but GPIB cards.
That's not for me, maybe for Nicolette.
Yeah. But taking GPIB and data acquisition cards that were in the new bus slot, and they were conflicting with other cards in the other slots. And so we were always getting these customer service technical support calls from NI engineers. And then one of the NI founders, the father of LabVIEW, Jeff Kodosky, was actually on our board. And so I met Jeff and had all these NI customers who we were trying to do support with. And so I was familiar with NI through that effort. So it was really cool to be able to go over there and start my career there.
Yeah, it's funny because let's back up, to the beginning of computers, right? What's crazy is think about it. When you used to buy a computer, people don't even think about this. You would be like, how many slots does it have? Like, how many
that was
ISA
huge.
slots? How many
expansion memory RAM slots how much memory can I add? Oh, completely.
Right. Can you jam into it? Like, people don't even think about that anymore. It's crazy.
No, I know. It is crazy. So good, Brian. You and I just super dated ourselves. That was awesome.
I don't really care.
I don't either. It's all wisdom, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Rebecca, over the course of that, over the course of that career, what would you say, and I don't want to limit it to one thing, but what would you say, what is it like marketing to engineers? Like, why is it different than marketing to us ordinary folk?
Right, us regular folks.
Yeah.
To me, it comes down to the critical nature of what they're trying to do in their jobs. So you think about medical devices that get embedded in human bodies, or vehicles that transport us either on on the Earth's surface or in the air or in space. It's like life and massive amounts of cost, not to mention brand reputation, are at risk for the decisions that they make about the smallest component on their product. Look at Boeing right now, it's just constantly in the news with their I think it's the 737 Max. They're continually having engineering problems. They're losing sales. Their revenue's dropping, and the reputational damage. You can hardly put a price on that. So, from just think about our everyday life and the things that we, as regular people, and it's normal. We take it for granted. That's just the way human beings are. But airbags, aircraft, improving fuel efficiency, climate change, all these grand challenges that the National Academy of Engineering has laid out. They're trying to solve these, and we're better for it in society because they have all the they have to take these risks and they have to solve these problems. And so marketing to them, if I had to say one thing, it would be, remember how critical the decision is that they're trying to make to reduce the risk as much as possible while staying competitive, while staying cost effective, right? All the other things that they have to trade off with risk.
Do you think also what happens is now, because if we look at like a lot of technology that was in like the automotive industry, in the, in aerospace, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it was like, I don't want to say older technology, but it was older technology, meaning like it was tested for a long time. So they knew there was no failure. And do you think with how technology, the speed that it increases and trying to keep up, maybe some of these companies are sometimes rushing out products or things that wind up getting them in trouble, like we talked about?
Yeah, the business pressures of staying competitive and releasing products as often as possible. And you look at SaaS now, that's a really nice benefit on the software side because you can release features all the time. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to wait for like the big, like Apple, right? This month, like doing their big release of their new devices. On the hardware side, it's a lot harder. But yeah, I mean, there is enormous business pressure inside companies that are trying to weigh quality and risk assessment with staying competitive and staying, trying to beat your competitor with features and with new innovation. So that's a huge dynamic happening inside companies, and I really admire the executives that give their engineering teams the right runway to make sure and asking the right questions. I mean, I think some of the best companies are the ones that are poking all the holes inside to make sure that they're able to convince themselves that this is the right way to go. Whether it's a service provider, vendor, whatever it is, they've weighed all the risks and they're ready to go. I mean, you just hear the aerospace. I feel like the aerospace and automotive markets are some of the ones that get the most headline news. Because they're the ones that affect the most lives, and we get it. There's something we can relate to. We're driving our cars every day. Tesla's, constantly in the news for this one little, feature of their car that, of course, is groundbreaking and cutting edge with the, autonomous driving. But it's cool, like at the same time. So they're having to weigh those trade-offs and the reputational damage that might come with it as they continue to fix it and improve it.
So then, considering how important every decision, is to an engineer, just even like you said, the smallest component is going to make such a big difference. What are they thinking as they're consuming their information? What types of information are they consuming that you've seen over the course of your career?
Right. I mean, how engineers consume, engineers consume, where they consume it. That's very engineer specific. They're going to consume on their own time in their own way. Some engineers like videos, some engineers like really long, 15-page data sheets. I mean, it really runs the gamut. So I think as marketers, we have to make sure we're checking the box and having a lot of different high quality types of content for all of those different consuming preferences. With that said, true, and actually, Brian, where you were for a long, or I guess for a while with, Global Spec and UBM and a lot of the other big trade publications and publishers out there, right? We've done research for years trying to zero in on what engineers do value in terms of content types and content sources that they trust. So data sheets, white papers, case studies, those are always top of the list, but there's many other videos, short videos for products. And in terms of most valued content sources, the websites of the vendors that they trust the most, trade publication websites. By region, it varies too. We know that Europe and Germany, they love their trade shows, and the research has proved that out. So, of course, COVID has hugely impacted that. And so I think that's probably moved the needle more toward a digital consumption, even in the more traditional markets and regions like, some of the markets in Asia and Germany and others. So, but no, there's really, really good research out there year after year. That anyone who's doing marketing to engineers should go seek out, those annual reports by True and Global Spec and the others.
Yeah. Do you think also too, you talked about conferences, they're pretty much at a halt, and they're, when we've seen some come back and some disappear back and, going back and forth. And we saw like this huge jump in like webinars. We've been doing a lot of really great live events, which are, totally different than like a webinar and live chats. Do you think we're going to still see some of that even when trade shows come back, still staying up at the top?
Oh, yeah. No, I do. Webinars are such an awesome middle of the funnel type of content where someone is been kicking the tires and they're ready from a consideration standpoint. They're ready to invest a little bit more time with that potential vendor. A 20 or 30 minute or more webinar is a great way for a marketer to bring their SMEs in and create valuable content in a very personal way. Like, right here, we're talking about some really important topics. It's very personal. I can ask questions in the chat. I feel like I got to know someone without, but as an engineer, I get to still be anonymous. I don't have to actually have a conversation with anyone.
Right.
I can just listen and I can kick the tires a little bit more and see if these guys are all that they say they are. So yeah, I'm a huge proponent of webinars. Again, quality is everything with engineers. They've got to be accurate. They've got to be valuable. You really got to put your best foot forward with your webinars and your best people forward.
Yeah. And we're
Huge
talking,
fan.
yeah, we've seen a lot of success with the, like you said, the live chat format
Live
with the
chats,
questions.
Yeah.
And just having a very personal
Well,
conversation like
yeah.
this instead of a talking head. And I know,
Well,
I think,
I think, I mean, my opinion is those like, talking head PowerPoint webinars. I don't want to say they're dead because they do have their use, but
Yeah.
the most of them are, most have high bailout rates. Let's be honest, because they're not entertaining. And like anything else, we talked about that. What's going to hit the news? It's the entertaining stuff. It's Elon Musk and what's his new robot? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the stuff that's gonna be exciting to people. Like, what's exciting? I mean, don't get me wrong. You need to learn information, but exciting also.
And don't
important.
spend the first 10 minutes of the webinar doing introductions and blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, like 2 minutes and hit the headline in the first 5 minutes. When back in the old days when we used to do press tours and get on planes with, bags of equipment and go set up in conference rooms and, all over the country, when I was at NI, we had a motto that we would get to the product within 5 minutes. We would demo the product within 5 minutes, whether it was physically getting it out of a bag and putting it in an editor's hand, or it was actually bringing up a software screen and diving into some part of the software. We were collecting data or showing some phenomenon within software within 5 minutes.
See, I think that's the point we're talking about here. Like most people, they miss it's a story, right? You're telling a story to some degree, regardless of what it is. You're telling a story, and if you don't have that hook early on to get someone interested, you're going to lose their attention no matter how cool it is, and regardless of whether, it's important to them or not important, but their attention level, like grabbing their attention level is important, especially today with so much noise out there. Like there are so many things to grab your attention. You got your cell phone going off, you got, email coming in, it's
a lot easier, Brian, to lose someone's attention in the digital world than when you're in the conference.
I mean, right now, while I've been on the call, literally right now, while we're on this conversation, I see my phone right there, and I've got a Teams chat going. I'm LinkedIn giving me notifications. In fact, I'm going to turn the ringer off while we're on, so because probably the phone's going to ring, and that's what you're competing with. You spend all this time and effort to get this really high quality webinar, and then people spend 10 minutes doing introductions and forget it. People are already bailed. They've already bailed. They've already left the conference room. They're on to or the their Zoom call or whatever.
Exactly. And especially a group like engineers that, they'll always tell you they're pressed for time. They'll always tell you they're pressed for time. So,
So now as we're becoming more digital, right? Well, we are digital, right? And we know that B2B is very different than B2C. So now how are B2B products and services really moving in suit as well to a digital commerce kind of world?
Right. And, there's B2B and what I like to call this market that we live in the very technical engineering space. It's like B to B2B. So it's like, okay, the subsystem of hydraulics inside the plane, and then there's subsystems and components that go into that. So, I mean, this is just really upstream, really, really critical sales. So, what engineers, they're looking for the best possible solution for the least possible risk in my experience. So, to evaluate that and the best possible solution, the definition can be anything. It can be lowest cost. It can be most reliable. It can be, every buying team has a different definition of what best possible, means to them. But for them to evaluate the best possible solution and analyze that risk, they've got to do a lot of research. The internet for engineers is like a candy store for kids. They can research and research and research. And oh, by the way, they don't have to talk to anyone. They can do it on their own time. They can all divvy up buying teams, right? I'm going to go look at this. You go look at this, right? Buying committees will have multiple vendors they're going to, start off with. So there's all of this research that they're doing. And, and data shows, and this is some of the data that I referenced before, R&D engineers do not want to talk to salespeople until very late in their buying process, unless they have to. But if they don't have to, they're not going to. They're going to do all their research. They're going to start with a set of vendors and whittle it down. And in that whittling down, they're not going to be talking to sales. They're going to be doing everything digitally. And they want to do their research in both the types of contents they value, data sheets, white papers, videos, webinars that we just talked about. They're kicking the tires. They're trying to stay as anonymous as possible. And they want to do it in the places they most trust and value. For some in Germany, that might be a trade show, and others, in California or Austin, that's probably through online websites and, and different online sources. So, when it comes to actually making the purchase, then for lower cost, lower risk purchases, maybe the whole entire buyer journey is happening digitally all the way to the purchase. And that's where sales and marketing has to be aligned in that entire buyer journey and making it as high velocity and seamless as possible. For the more complex, higher risk, higher cost purchases, that end of the buyer journey happens through engagement with the sales team and with the actual companies. But that's in my experience, that's why more and more of this of the buyer journey is happening online for this B2B sale, because it's all about doing research, whittling down your vendors and trying to figure out which partner is gonna give you the best possible solution for the least possible risk.
Well, I think too, and I think something really important you brought out is that digital journey. Like, we have this content mountain. We'll throw a link for anyone who wants to check it out. But we talk about this content mountain because everyone is coming in at different points and different knowledge levels, even from an engineering perspective,
Absolutely.
right? And so you need to hit them at the point they're at. And I think so many things online, and I'm not even going to say media companies, because I think even a lot of companies have it wrong, where they're trying to go just for the sale. They're going for that immediate, like, let me sell this to them, or that being the true, ROI, and or I shouldn't say ROI, the oh my God, why can't I think of the word? The goal. Right. The goal of this is the sale, which it is ultimately. But if you don't get them to the point of leading them to the right place to make the sale and give them the pieces they need to get to the sale, what happens is a lot of times you just don't get the sale to begin with, because you can't just make that the first thing they see. And I think a lot of media companies and companies, manufacturers and component manufacturers get it wrong. They're just going for that straight sale versus engaging them, becoming their friend, giving them knowledge, giving them what they need to know, and helping them make the decision to know, is this the right product for me?
Yeah, no, that's so right. I literally this morning was on a 2-hour call with a software company, very engineering focused. And it was the whole marketing team. And one of their biggest challenges was that all of their content is bottom of the funnel. Mm-hmm. So someone comes to their webpage and or their homepage, their website, and sales is pushing and pushing and pushing that, no, you've got to get them to sign up for a software demo. It's like, okay, well, that's not a bad call to action. That's a really good idea. But what else might someone want to do if they've never come to the website before? Or they've never engaged with our brand before, so they're really having a challenge with that, because and that's where marketing has got to have a real leadership voice in the process of developing that whole buyer journey strategy, and how we talk to customers, and how we educate the executive team and the sales team that people, just like you said, Brian, people are going to come in at all levels of understanding. And it might be something that they're talking about that's not even in the budget till next year. So they may be super knowledgeable, but they're not ready to buy. So they've got time. They're coming in early to do their research. So, Exactly. So it's crazy that we're talking about this, and I literally just had this conversation. It was like,
well,
it's like therapy.
It's that common.
Yeah,
Right?
it's that common, right?
I think we all live it, and and you see, and the reality is you see like the really smart companies, they understand this and they're interacting with it. And, forget about, even types of content, like we talked about engineers, some engage in video, some engage, and they're diversifying the actual asset or the piece of content to various different things, because every engineer is going to engage in a very different way. Like, it's crazy because sometimes, depending on what we're doing, we engage with engineers on Instagram, which is pretty crazy. And if you want that group that is in that realm, you need to engage in a very different way,
with really different content. Yeah, exactly right. It just comes back to who is your persona or personas in a prioritized fashion. What are their pains? What are your business goals? Where are you trying to go as a company, and how can marketing move the needle with a limited set of dollars and hours in a particular quarter or year? And if it's Instagram, then go for it, but be smart about exactly what you need to do in that channel. If it's LinkedIn, if it's YouTube, whatever it might be, and hopefully primarily it's your own website.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue into, something that we preach as a company, and something that you were talking about earlier, these manufacturers and distributors kind of taking the reins and becoming their own media company.
Yep. That's right.
I know this is something that, is important to you.
Yep. Yeah, it is. This is so crazy. I have been doing marketing to engineers for longer than I'll admit. No, but for a long time.
Well, you already talked about the
new bus slots.
Motherboard,
but I've been doing this long enough that I get it. Okay. Then Joe Polizzi has, hey, I've got this new book, Content Marketing or Content Inc., second edition. Would you read it and write a review? I'm like, yeah, sure, it'd be great. Oh my gosh. It was like I was reading it all over again, like learning about content marketing all over again. It was like, God, duh. Remember all these super important things about being your own media company and building your own audience. And I know this. And it was, you can't be reminded enough about how important it is to be your own media company first. Again, this company I was talking to this morning, this marketing team, they were talking about how, can't remember how exactly it all started, but that, they were saying how important do you think blogging is versus, I don't know, we were talking about some other things. And I said, well, it's all important, but your blog, to me, there are so many reasons to blog, but number one of the top reasons is it gives you it is your voice. It is your channel to bring your SMEs in and demonstrate your knowledge, your care for the customer, your understanding of the customer, your differentiation, the value you're trying to bring to the market. Over and over and over. And they had actually stopped blogging in June. And because they were kind of hit pause on their strategy. And I said, okay, well, it's fine to hit pause on your strategy and relook at that, but don't stop blogging. Right. Because anyway,
that falls into budget too, because they don't have the budget to continue to do that if they don't even know what they're writing about.
Here's the thing, and a lot of us have been saying this for years, and I feel like I have Tourette's when I say it to some degree, but once you have a website, you are a media company, right?
Absolutely.
That is it.
That's right.
You create a website, you have become a media company to some
100%.
level, and if you're not populating that with content, that's when you are in trouble, So
there is no greater investment that you can make in your brand and in your funnel than your website and your content. I talk about your website. It's like this awesome, fancy car sitting out ready to drive. But if you don't put fuel in it, then it's not going to do anything for you. Yeah. So you've got to spend that is the essence of your media company. The whole structure and the presence of your website and the content that you feel it with.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, you forget about it just running out of gas. You leave it there, it's going to start rusting out and be like,
exactly.
that's
exactly.
basically what happens.
And
right?
we were talking about, well, what about YouTube? What about SlideShare and, Instagram? Right. Those are all shared, great shared media outlets. But if it's get back to blogging or go build out your YouTube channel, I'm going to say get back to blogging.
Yeah.
Because that's the number one, those are amplification channels. You've got to have your own, channel just pristine.
And also, I mean, I think there's two things. One, in that you also need to own your audience, right? So using those channels are great, but you need to figure out how to convert them so you own them, get them to register with you, sign up for a newsletter, whatever the case is.
Yep.
Get them back to your website. But I think the other thing we see a lot, and I'm sure you see this, is, you talked about that company that stopped and like, oh, no budget or I'm planning. Here's what I got to say. There's a book out there for you. It's called I Got Shit for Time and No Money, A Simple Guide to Content Marketing.
100%. I'm working at a startup right now. I have zero budget and zero team.
She's like, I've got shit for time and no money.
I am sending you a book. It comes out. When does it come out, Nicolette? It is on the radar. September 27th, 29th.
It's the Monday. It's whatever that Monday is.
Yeah,
whatever that Monday is.
I don't know. Sometime soon.
I will send you a book you could give to your client.
Okay. Yeah. Because no, to me, there are excuses, and there's likely viable ones, but you're going to be hard pressed to convince me that you can't come up with a blog post that is of high quality and value and keep your blog going, every week or, every, couple times a month until you get your strategy kind of figured back out. And I don't mean to be picking on this team because we were preaching to the choir to each other. It wasn't that team. It was bigger picture, challenges that they're facing. But no, and the other thing we talked about was repurpose. I mean, in a technical play like what we're talking about, where you guys are focused with engineers, it's really hard to get an SME's time pulled away from the work that they're doing to help you with a really high quality white paper. But if you can get 5 or 10 hours of their time, get that really high quality 2,500, 3,000 word white paper done, let them go back to their job. For God's sake, you've got a treasure trove of content that you can repurpose for months after that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the engineers, we've talked about this before. We have a few engineers who are very good writers, but it doesn't tend to be that's the exception.
That's the exception. That's my experience. Yeah.
And it's very difficult, we've found, to get them to really dive into the content in any way, even just as a subject matter expert.
Yeah.
It's very hard. It's a challenge.
Yeah. That's where that partner in marketing that's a journalist, by trade, or has that interviewing, storytelling, passion. That's the perfect combination of super engaged SME and a fabulous storytelling journalist.
Yep.
To pull that story out. Yep.
So, Rebecca, can you leave us with something? If you were talking to the next generation of marketers right now, and they were getting into this B2B space, knowing what you know now and what you didn't know then, what would you say to them? What should they be focusing on?
What I have found that's made a difference for me in all of my working in this very technical space is if you want to grow your career and your level of authority, responsibility, compensation, title, all of those things that we all want as career-minded marketers, and in my case, or career-minded people, you've really got to understand the technology and the customer. So fundamentally, you've got to invest your own time and understand, why does this company that I'm going to work for even exist? How are they making money over their competitors? What is their differentiation? What is that value? And how does that match up with the buyer? And what does the world look like that they're living in? Why are they even looking for this product? What are the pains they're facing? What does their team look like? Because if you can understand those two things, you can have you can add an enormous amount of value around a virtual or real, maybe one day we'll be back to a real conference table, in brainstorming about content strategy or campaign strategy, or who do we need to get leads, like what type of persona do we need to be driving leads into the funnel? How do we move those leads down through the funnel and through that, and make that buyer journey as efficient and meaningful and building trust along the way. How can we do that? You can't, it's going to be very difficult, I think, for a marketer to contribute to that level of conversation without understanding the technology that you're trying to sell and the buyer that you're trying to target it to. So that would be my number one advice. Understand the product, understand the buyer.
Well, Rebecca, we thank you for joining us today. Can you please let us know where we can learn more about you and that startup that you're involved with, and anything else you want to tell us about? Please go for it.
Yeah, no, LinkedIn, is the best to connect with me, and the startup that I'm at now, it's the little engine that could. We'll see where it goes, but it's basically Airbnb for the chemical space. So if anyone listening to this is a chemical engineer or in the chemical space, you can come over to chemvm.com and put in the product you're trying to build, and we'll hook you up with manufacturers. So it's a really, really cool technology, and digital transformation in the chemical space is taking its own sweet time. So we're staying very persistent and really sticking with it.
Awesome. Thank you again for your time, Rebecca.
You bet.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We hope you enjoyed that episode. But before you go, please don't forget to check out Electronic Specifier's recent electronics industry survey, just done in 2020-2021, where the company asked key questions around some of its own platform, the types of content engineers like, preferred methods of receiving new information. There's a wealth of information there. So we'll put the link down below for you. And here's a final message from our sponsor.
At a pro baseball game, when a hometown hero hits a grand slam, a lucky fan ends up with an autographed bat. Why not celebrate that same passion in electronics? Technical is giving away a top-of-the-line Metcal GT120 soldering station signed by Mythbusters alum Tori Belleci. Unlike autographed sports gear, you won't want to leave it in a display case. Check out Tori's GT120 unboxing video. Go to technical.com/Metcal giveaway and enter for a chance to win. We'll also drop the link where you're watching this or listening to this below.